Hey guys, long time no see, it's Monado Boy 83. Yes, I'm fully aware of how lame that was, but that's how I'm doing the intro, deal with it. Anyway, I know it has been a while since I've made a new video, but I did want to make a few more before the summer is over. And today we're going to be talking about this cool little indie game called The Messenger, which I just finished a few days ago. I am going to be getting into spoilers, so if you do not want any spoilers, probably stop watching this, but I don't think knowing the spoilers is a huge deal, and I'm not going to talk about every little spoiler, so take that as you will. Anyway, without further ado, let's dive right in. For a bit of background, The Messenger is an 8-bit platformer inspired by the NES classic game Ninja Gaiden. The game came out in 2018 to highly positive reception and is the debut title from the Canadian indie developer Sabotage Studios. The story is relatively simple. You play as an unnamed ninja who's been trained to fend off a potential attack from the Demon King and his army, who, lo and behold, show up to wreak havoc on the ninja village. With the ninjas unfortunately powerless to stop the Demon King, the fabled Western hero appears and fends him off, then bestows our unnamed hero with a sacred scroll, making him the Messenger. The Messenger's job is to take the scroll to the top of the mountain, and with that, the game begins. The story isn't really deep or thought-provoking, but it's pretty well done for the most part, and it has some really solid characters. There's a shopkeeper who always has something witty to say, and he actually made me laugh quite a few times, which is pretty impressive because most games don't really make me laugh. There's also Quarble, who's this little demon dude that revives you every time you die. He's obnoxious, but in the right ways, if that makes any sense. Basically, in this game, instead of a life system, whenever you die, Quarble will show up and eat up the time shards that you find for the next little bit. Time shards are like this game's equivalent of Mario's coins and Sonic's rings. There are more characters to talk about, but I'm going to get into that later. After all, this is a video game, and I still have not talked about the gameplay yet, so let's probably get into that. The gameplay of The Messenger is also pretty straightforward. You traverse through a few different levels, collecting time shards, fighting enemies, and defeating some bosses. Like Ninja Gaiden, you'll have access to shurikens, which I didn't use all too frequently because there is an ammo system, and using swords doesn't need ammo, so I was just stuck with that. Most enemies die in one hit, which is really nice, and for the enemies that need a few more hits, your sword slices are pretty quick, so nothing takes too long to kill, keeping the pace fast. You also get those classic Ninja Gaiden climbing claws, which makes for some interesting platforming. Now, the new-ish feature that this game brings to the table is the Cloud Step, which is a super cool ability that lets you jump again after you hit an enemy. Sounds simple enough, but it feels real good to chain Cloud Steps and stay airborne. Later on, you'll also get a wingsuit, which lets you glide, and this awesome rope dart, which pulls you to whatever it hits. The rope dart, combined with the Cloud Step, lets you move through areas really fast, and it makes for a small but really useful arsenal of abilities to work with, which is good, because like Ninja Gaiden, this game is pretty difficult.
Okay, so you've been going on about all this stuff, but what do you actually do in the game?
I'm getting to it. Wait, who said that? Alright, take the scroll to the top of the mountain. Sounds pretty standard, right? Well, it is. On your way to the top, you'll go through the classic different themed worlds, like an ice world and the cave, with some more fresh places like a mushroom-infested swamp and a bamboo forest. Each area has its own feel to it and introduces a new mechanic to keep things fresh as you keep moving. Throughout each area are these little hidden puzzle rooms with these things called power seals inside. Solve the puzzle and you get the seal. Get all the seals and you get this really cool new weapon called the Windmill Shuriken, which recharges its ammo and kind of boomerangs around until you catch it. So if you get good at avoiding it, you can do some big damage. You won't be able to get them all till late game, but doing every one of them will not only help you get better at the game, but it offers some fun challenge and really shows you how far you can push the game's mechanics. As things usually go in games like this, you're going to have to fight some bosses as you go along, and the bosses are pretty unique and challenging in their own ways, each one kind of serving as a test of the new things you've learned along the way. And they all have some pretty fun things to say, like when you destroy the Emerald Golem, and it turns out it was all just a huge misunderstanding. Some of the bosses were a little frustrating because you have to do a lot of experimenting to figure out what the best way to win is, but once you got it down, it's not too hard. This is especially true for me and the Cyclops battle, where I learned to use the rope to get around to their hitboxes better, letting me beat the boss pretty easily. It's all pretty fun, but you will die a lot. Enemies can be pretty tough to deal with depending on where they're placed, and sometimes you will have to do some really precise button presses, but it does feel super satisfying to get through a tough part. There are also plenty of checkpoints to revive from, and they're spaced far enough apart where it is going to be a challenge to get to the next area, but not so hard that you're going to have to backtrack through a lot of really difficult rooms to continue, which felt really nice. Now, I haven't really touched on most of the story. After all, this is only the first little bit of the game. There's a lot more to The Messenger. And now, that's what we're going to talk about.
So, over the course of the game, you'll run into this robed dude called the Shopkeeper, and by spending the time shards you get along the way, you can upgrade your abilities with a skill tree. The abilities are really useful, like getting more health and being able to cut enemy projectiles, probably my favorite ability of the bunch. After getting to the top of the mountain, you'll see the Shopkeeper and some other Shopkeeper-looking guys. They tell you to hold the scroll up, Tron style, which opens up the Tower of Time, a final trial to see if you've got what it takes to fulfill the prophecy. The Tower of Time is really freaking hard, and it's going to take all the skills you've learned to get through it, but once you do, you have a boss fight where the blue-robed people do the thing and turn into a huge golem. This is also tough, but once you beat it, you have a final test of faith where you jump down into a pit. Into the future.
Yes, this is a time travel game, but I really liked how they did it here. So all this time you've been playing with 8-bit era graphics and music, but when you time travel, it goes to 16-bit, and it looks so good. But after you time travel for the first time, you gotta go fight this demon general, which is kind of an annoying fight, and after you beat him, you go back to the Ninja Village, and you realize that you have gone so far east that you have now gone west and become the Western hero. And you pass off the scroll, fulfilling the prophecy as your time as the messenger. But the game is far from over, because this only takes 3 hours to get to, and I don't know about you, but why on earth would a game have a time travel mechanic at the last, 30 minutes?
After passing off the scroll, you become the next Shopkeeper for the new messenger, and you get some really funny scenes where you kind of see yourself in this new messenger as he jumps around erratically, as I did sometimes myself. Unfortunately, Quarble isn't really on top of helping out the new messenger, so you have to ditch your robes and get back out there with a new quest. See, there's this curse causing the demon army to show up every 500 years and attack, which is why there needs to be a messenger in the first place. The only way to break the curse is to get all these music notes to play a melody that can dispel the demon army's attacks forever. How are you going to do that? By going back through the places you visited and some more to go and find them. Turns out the scroll you had this whole time was a map of all the different locations, which, with some upgrades from the shop, can not only show you all the checkpoints you've reached, but where the power seals are and where you can change time. Yes, that's right, you can change time mid-level now by jumping through these time portals. They add some really cool puzzles and let you explore even more of the levels you've already been in. From this point on, the game is kind of a Metroidvania, where you're going to explore all the levels again looking for the notes, many of which require you to complete these cool side quests around the world, like finding all these little creatures called Phobkins to build you a bridge to a new area, or using time travel to grow a tea leaf to exchange it for a candle that then lets you see in a very dark cave, which leads to a cool new environment. That was a mouthful. This is the bulk of the game, and while you don't gain access to a ton of new abilities here, leaving the gameplay mostly the same, having a new playstyle to apply your skills in, combined with the fun of exploration, makes this part a blast. It's quite long, all things considered, and finishing the game at this point took about 7 hours, leaving a decently lengthy but thoroughly entertaining game throughout, and that's exactly what I want out of any game I play.
Alright, I'm not going to spoil anything else from here on out. I think there are a lot of really cool things to discover for yourself, and I don't want to take those moments away from you. I really enjoyed the gameplay, and I don't think the game ended as good as it could have. The writing is definitely more of a strong suit here than the actual plot structure, but that's not really a big deal because you're not here for the story, you're here for the gameplay. But the only things I haven't really touched on now are the music and the art direction, and those things really impressed me, which is very difficult to do, might I add.
Throughout this video, you've been listening to songs from the game, and though I know chiptune music like this isn't for everybody, I have to say pretty much every single song from this game was super catchy and memorable. Plus, each track in the game has 2 versions, a more simplified 8-bit version and a fuller 16-bit version for when you head to the future. Each track is as unique as the area you hear it in, and without a better way to describe it, they give off the feel of each area as well. It's easy to get annoyed with a game's soundtrack if you have to hear the same just okay tracks over and over. Many RPGs have this problem, especially if their battle theme isn't amazing, but I never got tired of any track in this game, and I probably heard each for at least 30 to 45 minutes each. It also helps that the time traveling changes things up just enough to keep things fresh. Same with the visuals. The 16-bit graphics are phenomenal, and the sprite work must be commended, but at the same time, there's a classic charm to the 8-bit style too. This isn't a situation where the time travel graphical update is just clearly better. There's merit to both styles. I never felt like I just wanted to play with the more detailed graphical capabilities of the 16-bit style, which is really good for something like this where you're gonna have long sections that you're forced to play in one style or the other. Everything just looks really good throughout, and I gotta say that hat be looking pretty dope though.
I did have a few problems with this game. It's not perfect, but nothing I haven't already mentioned before. The game is definitely very difficult. I died almost 300 times. Thanks for pointing that out, Carble. And sometimes I felt like those deaths were pretty stupid, but nothing I couldn't get past without trying a different approach, which is pretty nice. I don't feel like the story ended as well as it could have, but that really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things in my opinion. Now, there is a free story DLC expansion called Picnic Panic that was released last year, which I did not finish for the review because the octopus fight at the beginning is stupid, and I don't have the patience to finish it. So take that as you will. I highly recommend this game though. It is phenomenal, and I am so excited for Sabotage Studios' next game, Sea of Stars. Anyways, I hope you liked this video. Thank you all for watching. If there's anything I can do to make my reviews better, please let me know in the comments down below, and I hope to see you all in the next one.